14 centuries ago, the Qur'an was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the Arabian desert. Now, what I was saying is that even at the time of Muhammad, they didn't run around with books in their hands like we have today. The Qur'an was not compiled in book form like you see this. It was all written down, by the way, on such things as scrolls and animal hides, palm leaves, things like this.
Animal hides and palm leaves? Yeah, sounds like a really plausible way of predicting God's so-called latest divine scriptures.
But the Qur'an itself, gathered together as a book, didn't happen during the lifetime of Muhammad, peace be upon him. This came about at a later date. And yet, even then, it was not considered to be right until they would check it against the memories of so many of these companions who had totally memorized the Qur'an. And of course, they all agreed exactly point for point, dot for dot, how it is because they had all memorized it. It wasn't something they had to worry about making up later. It wasn't something they had to worry about making up later. Qur'an is exactly the same, verbatim, word for word, letter for letter, and dot for dot. So how is it this book is being preserved so exact? And Allah tells us in the Quran that He will preserve this recitation, and He's done so.
Exactly the same, verbatim, explicitly, word for word, letter for letter, dot for dot.
The beautiful part here is that it is all 100% preserved. Not so much in the paper and ink as many people consider.
So it's 100% preserved, but not so much. How is it 100% preserved in oral form and written form if it's not? Hello?
Now, no matter how you look at it, this would be a strange thing to consider.
I must agree with the Sheikh 100%.
You might say, aha, there's a discrepancy. Oh, I heard that maybe somebody said there could be different Qur'ans. All right. That's why we want to bring this subject up. Did you know that there's something about this that a lot of Muslims don't even know, and from some less educated Muslims?
Wait. Something that most Muslims don't know? I wonder why their scholarly leaders have not disseminated this information.
So don't go away. You're going to want to hear about the different writings of the Qur'an. I decided to give you a little taste of something to keep your curiosity piqued. And that was a subject about the different writings in the Qur'an. And how could it be that there are different Qur'ans? Well, in fact, you can go to the museums where the Qur'an is still preserved today. And what I'm talking about here, it's preserved two ways. When I was visiting in Istanbul, in the Topkapi Museum, which is really now set up as a museum, but it used to be a part of the Caliph's compound. It was a very beautiful setup that he had. And now they have such things on display as the swords that were used by the companions and different clothing and articles and headgear and so on. It's all preserved there. One of the things they have is the text of the Qur'an, written out by hand, of course. It's long before printing presses. And you look at it and you'll say, wait a minute, that's not Arabic. I know Arabic. It doesn't look like Arabic. What is this? Well, they have the same thing exactly if you go to the museum, which is located in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. This is the home of the great imams, such as Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Tirmidhi, and many more. Now, in that place, you will find the Qur'an written there and on exhibition. But you're going to say the same thing. This doesn't look like Arabic. And if you go to England, to the museum there, you're going to see again, this doesn't look like Arabic. The reason is because at the time of the revelation of the Qur'an, none of the Arabs used any tashkil marks, and it was assumed that if you could read and write in Arabic, you knew how the structure of the sentences and words were, that you would be able to pronounce it. You see, there are no vowels in Arabic. These were added much later, what's called vowel markings. Qur'an is exactly the same, verbatim, word for word, letter for letter, and dot for dot. You see, there are no vowels in Arabic. These were added much later. Qur'an is exactly the same. These were added much later, verbatim, word for word, letter for letter, and dot for dot. And then you substitute different consonants to represent vowel. But for those who are not familiar with the structure of language, they wouldn't be able to do that. They might pronounce it wrong. And this is not acceptable for Quran. It might be for hadith and teachings of, just Arabic itself and talking about stories, but when we're going to talk about the Quran, it has to be exact. So how can we do that? How we preserve it? Well, what they did, they used marks. They put these dots so that if you saw a round circle, you could quickly tell the difference without knowing the size of the circle, how it compares to another circle with a bigger tail on it, and so on. They would just put one dot above, which was the sound of fa, like in fan, or two dots for the sound of cough, like in QU, we use in English. Don't have it in Arabic in English. But each one of these, like a dot below the line, would be a ba, like in bait. A dot above would be noon, the sound of N. And then two dots, ta. All of this was added. It was not in the Quran in the time of the companions because they didn't have it in the language yet. It wasn't there. It came in the next generation.
It came a generation after the Sahaba? And after the Prophet was dead? That doesn't seem to go hand in hand with your previous statement. Sheikh Yusuf Estes, what's going on?
All of this was added. It was not in the Quran in the time of the companions. It wasn't something they had to worry about making up later. All of this was added. So in the 7th century is about the time that the Muslims began to add what's called the tashkil, the harakat, to these letters. Another thing that they did was to put something over and below the letters so you knew to pronounce it with the sound of a and e and u. Otherwise, again, I'll repeat to you, there are no vowels in the Arabic language. Could be different Quran, different writings of the Quran. And how could it be that there are different Qurans? You might say, aha, there's a discrepancy. There's not a book like it.
There sure isn't.
A man who could neither read nor write. In fact, it's been said many times, if out of all of the books on earth, that we had lost all of the books on earth, that the Quran is the only book on earth that we could bring back exactly as it was, word for word, letter for letter, and dot for dot.
You might want to think again.
The good Sheikh cannot bring back a book dot for dot or valve for valve, but perhaps there is another book other than the Quran that can be brought back, even without its original text.
Hi, I'm here with Dr. Daniel Wallace, who is the Executive Director of the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts. Dr. Wallace, what do you do?
We go around the world and digitize as many Greek New Testament manuscripts as we possibly can. It's a huge task because there's over 2.6 million pages of manuscripts to shoot and about 5,800 manuscripts.
How many manuscripts, Greek manuscripts, are we up to, by the way?
It's 5,839, and then we have about 15 to 20,000 manuscripts of other ancient languages, plus over 1 million quotations by church fathers. We can zero in very, very well on what the original text said.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wallace.
1, 2, 3, 4.